My name is Chris Bailey, and I'm the author of Intentional: How to Finish What You Start, and Hyperfocus.
How to follow through on goals.
So, if intentionality is the key to finishing what we start, goals are how we get there. A goal is a story of change that we're trying to make to our life. But what a goal is, at its core, is a prediction. A goal is a prediction of where we believe our current and our planned actions will take us. And I don't know if you've ever tried predicting the future before, but if you have, you've probably realized just how bad we are at predicting the future. We don't know what's around the corner in the world or even in our own lives sometimes. We overestimate how many resources we'll have for a goal, how much time we'll have for a goal. Right? Think about all the New Year's resolutions that we set. And then reality sinks in. So a goal is really a prediction, which often turns into an expectation of what will end up happening in our life, which turns into disappointment when it turns out that we can't predict the future, which turns into yet another goal that we set. And so goals are really these stories of change that we're trying to create. But when we're not careful, they can set us up to feel disappointment when we don't predict the future that we're planning for. We get so much wrong about goals. And I think a lot of the heuristics that we use to set goals are just these ideas that have circulated for a long time that we don't even know where they came from originally anymore. So SMART goals come to mind for this, where a SMART goal, there's a lot of advice out there about SMART goals, that we should set goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. The words mean something different depending on who you ask, actually. But the research shows that they don't work. They don't actually work. Specific goals often aren't more helpful when we're in the learning stage of a goal. And there's redundancy in this criteria as well. So aren't measurable goals also realistic and kind of attainable too? So there's redundancy in the criteria. There's criteria that doesn't actually matter. And the research shows that there's actually a big amount of quote-unquote research waste that has been conducted around SMART goals. What does work is becoming more intentional across every level of our life. From what we do today that allows us to act toward a goal, that to what we plan this week that allows us to act toward a goal, to the goal itself, to whether that goal is connected with what we value at our deep and fundamental level. So there are 4 steps to goal attainment. Shape a goal into something that you want to do, then act on the goal, then edit the goal. And then the final step is to maintain the goal. So when it comes to shaping a goal, we need to get 2 big things right. We need to get the outcome that we're after and the process that will get us to that outcome. So, for example, learning a new song on the piano, right? The outcome for that is to learn the new song on the piano. That's the goal. But the process that it takes us to get there is very different than that outcome. It might be do this new song for 20 minutes every day this week. So we need both when it comes to a goal, the process and the outcome. And we need to set intentions across multiple levels of our life. We can't just set these broad goals. We need to think, okay, how am I going to work toward them this week and today and this moment? There's a great quote that I love from Annie Dillard that kind of relates to this, where she wrote that how we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. And the exact same thing is true with regard to our goals. We need to think about the day-to-day with the goals that we set. So many of our goals are sepia-toned fantasies that sound incredible on the surface. One that really comes to mind for me is waking up early. Now, I love the idea of waking up early, of being this incredible early riser to, wake up at 5 and read the paper and meditate and answer email, do all these things. But whenever I integrate this habit into my life, which I love the idea of, I realize just how much I absolutely hate this ritual. I have to go to bed when friends want to hang out. I have to do all these things in the morning when I have no energy. I'm a night owl at heart. That's when I thrive personally. And it just goes to show that so often the idea of a goal is far more attractive than what the goal actually looks like in our life on a daily basis. And so, mind if any of your goals are sepia toned, because how we spend our days is how we spend our lives. I remember when I was first starting with looking at process versus outcome goals, and I was really, really against the idea of setting outcome goals. I'm not that accomplishment driven in my life. Accomplishments never really inspire me. I've never been inspired to do these big, audacious things, but I've always loved the process of doing them. So, writing a book, for example, I love the process of writing a book. I never think about what it might look like in the world, maybe for better or for worse. I'm not sure. I'll have to ask my publisher. But what I've realized, though, is outcome goals and process goals, if you're against them, they're both two sides of the same coin, where we need that broader story of change, which is the outcome that we're trying to achieve in our life. But we also need the process that'll get us there. So there is a reflection that needs to happen, where if you make a list of goals, maybe under each of those goals, have the outcome that you're trying to achieve and the process that will get you there. Because remember, goals are just a prediction, right? They're a prediction of where you believe your current and your planned actions will take you. And sometimes your process goals will work. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes something that you thought would work incredibly well won't work at all. So I remember when I was learning the piano, I downloaded all these apps because I'm kind of a tech nerd at heart. And I would download the apps and hook a piano up into the iPad, and it would tell me which keys to play and when. But I found that habit kind of fell by the wayside until I hired a piano teacher, which added that layer of accountability into the goal. And so sometimes we need to try a lot of process goals out to find the one that actually sticks and allows us to make more progress to the outcomes that we have. Next up, act on the goal. So something that you'll find when you take a chance to capture all the goals that you're in the middle of is some of them will attract you. Some you'll feel just compelled to work on naturally. You'll be inspired, motivated to do them. And then you'll have others where you're looking at it and you just have this aversion to it, this aversive reaction where the goal just feels ugly. The things that you have to do, even though they might prove worthwhile at the end of the day, are not enjoyable in the slightest, right? So sometimes the process of doing something will induce aversion. And every goal has a different balance of desire and aversion. The interesting thing about desire and aversion is they fluctuate incredibly over the span of a goal. Like maybe you want to learn Spanish because you're going to Spain. And right after you book the tickets, even though it's 6 months away, you're fired up to go on this trip. And so you're learning, you're practicing for an hour every day. But then a few weeks go by, and that desire that you originally had, it begins to taper off a little bit, and maybe even gets to that point where that goal is aversive to you. But then, fast forward a few months, and the trip is coming up. It's right around the corner. And so you're inspired. Okay, I've got to learn Spanish again. It's just a few weeks away. Let me get going. Let's go. And so goals fluctuate over their timeline. And the interesting thing about aversion is there are certain characteristics a task or a goal can have that make it feel ugly to us. And those are whether a task is boring, whether it's frustrating, whether it is unpleasant, whether it is unstructured, whether it's far away in the future. So the further away a goal is, the less we feel compelled to do it. And the final one is when something's meaningless, when something doesn't feel connected with who we are on that deep, fundamental human level, which is our values. And so these characteristics of aversion, they tend to rear their ugly head when desire tapers off, especially at the start of a goal. We too often rely too much on desire to achieve our goals because desire fades, right? Excitement fades with a goal. And so we need to, when we set a goal, we can't just look at that excitement at the beginning. It's not enough. We can't just rely on the willpower of wanting to achieve it. That won't be enough because the time will come when we don't have that willpower, when we don't have the energy to expend, and when we just don't want to do it anymore because the conditions of our life aren't right. We need to accommodate for both desire, right? Increasing it where we can, surrounding ourselves with people who are conducive to achieving a goal, right? If we have a running goal, joining a running club, for an example, but taming aversion is critical too. So if you find yourself procrastinating on a goal, that's a sign that it's aversive, right? Those 6 triggers of aversion, they lead us to procrastination. I remember talking to one procrastination researcher and writing this book, and something that he said to me put me totally at ease. He said, everybody procrastinates. Procrastination is human. Studies show that 15 to 20% of adults chronically procrastinate, and about a third of students admit to procrastinating chronically as well. Another study surveyed a huge population of people and found that 99% of them openly admitted to procrastinating on their goals. And in my opinion, that 1% is lying through their teeth. This is a human, visceral reaction to something that we just don't want to do that trigger the 6 attributes of aversion. And there's nothing wrong with you if you do it. But one tactic that can help immediately, if this is something that you fall into, is to shrink your resistance to something. So let's say you're putting off a meditation practice. So you might think, do I want to meditate for 45 minutes today? No. Okay, what about 30? Okay, what about 20? Nope, still no. What about 15? No. What about 10? Yeah, I could do 10. And so you do it for 10. And what you find with resistance to doing things is the resistance that we have is almost always stacked at the beginning of the task, right? It takes a little bit of time to jump into the cold pool, but once we're in there, we warm up very quickly. And our work, our tasks are the exact same way. And procrastination on a psychological level is when our intentions fall apart, right? We kick our intention down the street too. We'll just deal with it another day. But we can untangle this phenomenon of procrastination by using why we procrastinate in the first place, which is those triggers of aversion. So if something's boring, for example, can you make a game out of it? Right? Have some fun with it. If something's frustrating, can you do it over a fancy latte or a beverage of choice? If something is far away in the future, can you set milestone goals? Can you bring in an accountability partner so you have that immediate accountability right in the moment, tomorrow, perhaps not 6 months down the line when you're going to have to run the marathon or actually speak Spanish because you're in Spain. So accounting for these triggers is entirely possible to do. One of my favorite ways to deal with as many triggers as you possibly can at one time is what I think of as aversion journaling. And so here's how it works. You give yourself a choice to either do the thing that you want to put off or journal about it. That's it. You get the choice between door A or door B. And so you're going to want to journal at the start of wanting to put something off. You're going to write about how ugly it is, why you don't want to do it, and really untangle a lot of knots with regard to a task. So setting a goal is not enough. We need to learn how to edit and improve and change them along that timeline of goal attainment. A big sign that you should be editing a goal is you're not doing it anymore, right? So the easiest way to tell if something is a priority for you and motivating for you is you've done it already. And so if there's a goal on your list that you're not making progress on, it could probably benefit from an edit or a revision. Sometimes they're worth dropping entirely. And so this is the thing about a goal. where a goal is really just a prediction in disguise. And so we need to revise our predictions as we get more data, right? So as we get feedback from trying out the different goals that are on our plate, we can see what's working, what's not working. We can revise the process goals that are associated with a broader outcome that we're trying to achieve in our life. Often with the outcome goals that I have, like with losing body fat, like with working out more often, I've needed to try a lot of different process goals to find the one that ultimately worked out for me. And you're probably going to be the same way. You're going to try out a lot of things and they're not going to work. Nothing's going to stick. You're going to be frustrated. But that's the process of learning what a goal is about. And so at the start of a goal, you're going to be in that learning mode. And so embrace the learning mode. Embrace the challenge of finding what will actually stick with making progress with a goal, and edit the goal continuously as you go forward, as you learn what will actually lead you to make more progress. So one of my favorite ways for capturing all the goals on my plate is just to make a goal inventory. So a goal inventory is just a list of every single goal that you're working towards. And it's remarkable how little we think about all the goals that we're in the middle of achieving, right? So we'll be at home and we'll be reminded of the dozen goals that we have to do around the house. We'll get to work. We'll open up our email. We'll see reminders of all the different projects that we have on our plate. And what this does is it increases the cognitive overhead of having goals. And it makes us it makes it so our environment is just chock full of reminders of all the things we have yet to do, of all the goals that we have yet to achieve. And so this is why I love the goal inventory so much, is it's a goal list that you review once a week, every week. I review mine every single Sunday, and all it is it lists out every single goal that you have across the different contexts of your life. So I have mine broken down by work is at the top because I have more work-related goals, and then home is at the bottom, and I review that once a week. And every week, I think, okay, what do I want to bite off when it comes to these goals this week? What do I have time for? What do I have attention for? What do I have energy for with regard to these? And what can I actually slot in the week ahead? If I have a fitness goal, can I schedule some workouts? If I have a goal to develop deeper friendships, can I arrange 2 coffee shop dates with friends this week? Whatever it might look like for you, it's a great way of bringing your goals down to that daily level. The final step is to maintain the goals that we have. So this can be a challenge. And I find this in my own life, including with things like meditation. So sometimes a new habit like meditation or something, I've been meditating for years, but I find that I go into phases in my life where meditation works so well that I stop doing it. And this is true for a lot of our goals. Sometimes they work so well that we stop doing them. We take them for granted. And so there's this critical maintenance phase when it comes to the goals that we have that we need to embrace more often. If a goal is really important for you and it isn't some project that's a once-off that, that's done, the reno is finished, on to the next thing. It's this thing that you want to actively maintain in your life, like meditation. Set a maintenance goal and add it to your goal inventory so you can review it regularly, and you'll find over time that you'll keep up with it just automatically, because that weekly reflection, it won't feel like, okay, I need to figure out what I'm going to bite off with every goal this week. It feels like a pat on the back because you've done such a good job of achieving the goal, and now you're in that maintenance phase. Sometimes you do need a little bit of a course correction when you do that goal review, but you'll probably find that when you've gotten to that point of goal attainment, when you're onto that maintenance phase of a goal, it'll feel more like a pat on the back than anything else. But also, and I have to be honest here, out of all the advice that I give, this is some of the toughest advice that I find to take myself. But something that I have basically forced myself to do after achieving a goal is to celebrate the fact that I achieved it. And it could be something as simple as ordering dinner one evening or going out for dinner. Food is my core competency, at heart. It's not productivity. It's, well, productivity plus food, let's say. But treat yourself in a way that feels like a celebration, whatever it might look like for you. Celebrate the fact that you achieved something incredible. Keep an accomplishments list. So the definition is in the name there, where an accomplishments list is a list of everything you accomplished. And you can do this across whatever timeline you like. So if I'm dragging my feet one week and I'm struggling to muster the motivation to do stuff, I'll just write an accomplishments list. What are all the results that my efforts are leading to at work, at home, regardless of the context? But you can also have one overall for the year, right? What are the big things you're achieving, that you have achieved, that you didn't expect to achieve, right? So everybody knows that feeling of, you achieve something during the day that you didn't plan on doing. It was something unexpected. And so you get to write it on your to-do list, and then you get to cross it off. You still get the satisfaction of having done it. Accomplishments list can be like that too, where if you achieve something that you didn't expect to, put it on the list. You've earned it.
Want to support the channel? Join the Big Think members community where you get access to videos early, ad-free.